Oh my god, it finally happened. Palantir has made it into the Standard & Poor's Index this quarter. Now, based on the news in after hours, this is how Palantir stock is reacting, which I'll go into a bit more as well with my thoughts. In the headlines, Palantir alongside Dell and Erie Indemnity will be added to the index, while American Airlines Group, Etsy, and Bio-Rad Laboratories will be removed. So awesome job again for Palantir making it into the list finally, as well as the stock reacting favorably as noted. Now, most importantly, what everyone cares about, what does this mean for Palantir? Now, for super long-term investors first, it's another check mark for Palantir, but a really big important one at that, I'd say. With this box checked reputationally and qualitatively first, this is another legitimate reason that companies should at least consider doing business with Palantir, or at least give them an edge when comparing it to a Joe Schmo. And large enterprises who care about reputation and track records obviously will take this into account, say if Palantir answered your RFP to see your business's needs. Even if it costs a little bit more to work with them, there is a certain level of risk that is mitigated partnering with any company here that Palantir's in the S&P. What if you build out a whole infrastructure and that company disappears, or one huge hit to them makes them disappear if they're not? Well, you're left behind to pick up the pieces or try to figure out how to go forward if you work with someone with a less reputation. And if there are certain competencies that that company was bringing before and isn't around anymore to help with, it could all go to waste. Palantir being in the S&P represents the top companies of the United States, and this comes with the expectation that you're the cream of the crop, not only in size, but in reputation of what the committee thinks in representing the businesses and industries of America, and hopefully to stay around. Now, I obviously believe Palantir represents the current and future economy of the United States among a more tech and AI-focused landscape for decades to come. And Palantir is embedded not only commercially, but in the most important institutions of the United States governmentally. They have ingrained themselves technologically so deep with the US government and military that sometimes it feels like the two just go hand in hand naturally no matter what, although commercial has been the main focus. Now, the stock itself, even if this is a short-term price action that we're seeing right now, over the long term, Palantir needs to be in index products for institutions that have them. Now, that means there is a certain level of buying and or holding expected automatically, just because they're being part of the index. It doesn't make them immune, of course, to downturns, but you can make the argument volatility won't be as severe just because of those reasons mentioned above. Now, over the long term, this most likely means more controlled volatility because of this hold needed. But in the near term, where we know Palantir is not known for being institution heavy, this may make the difference over time, even if it's not purchased for index reasons. Like I mentioned, as being a checkmark for doing business with them, it can also be a checkmark for seeing if they are a worthwhile investment to look into at least. Even the most conservative portfolios that might only look at S&P 500 companies that are profitable for certain larger allocations is a real possibility. The index inclusion literally means you're a top company and definitely can lower the risk profile in the near term. So even if it's not all at once, this can be another buy pressure possibility of more eyes just on being Palantir in general. So with the stock, in the short term, this is being heavily favored by the market right now in after hours with the announcement. So we'll see how this actually holds over the weekend into Monday and if this is sustained. But personally for me, actually, it's still business as usual in the short term, where I want the numbers in earnings to grow with Palantir over time still. If they can leverage this though into more business, I'm all for it. Now, the new risk involved with this in being in the index is dropping out of the index. Now, we will probably get a clue if this is even a possibility, if some scandal or a huge drop in the market cap, or just anything that can risk that. That will definitely hurt being one who gets in and then eventually drops out over time. And this is something just to keep in the back of our minds, of course. It's just a real possibility. They can stay in the index for decades long, but then as a dinosaur just fall into obscurity, or maybe some huge black swan event hits them immediately, and Palantir has to go out just because they don't make sense to keep in the index. Now, this are all technically possibilities, but at least with the current information we have today, my personal opinion is that Palantir is in no danger of any kind here. That demonstrates their ability, of course, to withstand and work through even the toughest situations as we've seen. And hopefully this is not a real possibility at all in the near future. But amazing job, Palantir, and now it just means we got that new check mark, and hopefully they can leverage it as much as possible to help the actual fundamentals of the business and grow. But what are your thoughts though below? And I'll see you in the next video.